Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there, having an awesome start to your Friday, and certainly a great ending to your week, great beginning to your weekend, whenever it may be that you're tuning in. And I appreciate you folks tuning in this morning as we give you the latest information on future Ophelia that you see on your screen. Still technically not a tropical storm as of the 5 a.m. update, just still a potential tropical cyclone, which is 16, so does not technically have a name as of right this moment, but chances are if you're tuning in later in the day, it might be Ophelia by then. But it's on its way to gaining tropical characteristics, and we'll give you all the latest and greatest information on this storm system that will bring big-time impacts to North Carolina, Eastern Virginia, into the Delmarva, Mid-Atlantic, and even southern New England. We'll get you all the in-depth information on this that we know as of now. So we'll talk about that, and then the second half of the video, we will talk about what's going to happen weather-wise for your Friday. It's a pretty active day across the lower 48. There's some severe weather potential across the northern plains. In fact, one half of the state of Wyoming has a chance to see tornadoes. The other half, like the higher elevation regions like Yellowstone National Park, could see a snowstorm. All right, and just, that pretty much just screams what we know, which is the changing of the seasons, which is pretty much happening right now. So we'll cover all this in this video. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And just thank you all so much for the support. It's been amazing over the last month, I would say. The channel has really grown, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who makes this channel what it is, which is the family type atmosphere. It's all love. 99% of the comments is all positive vibes. So thank you all so much for giving me this platform to talk about what I love, which is the weather. So if you guys got anything I can pray about, pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rolling. All right, let's see if our clicker is going to work, and it is, so we're good to go. So this is PTC 16. I'll tell you guys, I'll be very happy when we can just call this Tropical Storm Ophelia, because it's definitely odd calling it PTC 16, which stands for Potential Tropical Cyclone 16, but most likely will be Ophelia sometime in the next 18 hours. But the low-level circulation is right into here. Okay, so you notice still got dry air getting wrapped into the southern side of the system. Most of all the tropical storm force conditions are on the northern side of this system, as you can tell with a big blow up of convection right here in the circled region. You got some convection out over here, but there's still dry air getting wrapped all the way to the low level circulation, which is right into here. So this will meander its way to the North Carolina coastline throughout the afternoon, evening, and overnight hours, and eventually will be making landfall sometime around this time, but tomorrow morning. And this will make its official landfall as probably a tropical storm. It's forecast to become a full-fledged Tropical Storm Ophelia, which is our next name in the hurricane list. So let's talk about it more in depth. But right now, it is not a tropical system. It's still on its way to gaining up those tropical characteristics, really getting a cocoon of moisture and developing a warm core. So let's continue to move forward. The latest information from the National Hurricane Center, I mean, it's a 50-mile-per-hour potential tropical cyclone. So it's a 50-mile-per-hour low pressure out there. So it's producing tropical storm force conditions. It's not a tropical storm. But as you can tell, as we get to the next few updates, you get that S with basically the white S with the black around it. That stands for tropical cyclone down here. So this is forecast to become a full-fledged tropical storm. Right now, 50-mile-per-hour storm out there, moving north at 14 miles per hour. Most likely will move northwest at some point, and then eventually make landfall into North Carolina, where you do have tropical storm warnings up from Wilmington, pretty much up the rest of the North Carolina coastline, up into the Chesapeake Bay, and I wouldn't be surprised if these get extended a little bit further up into the Delaware Bay, but this does include areas of coastal regions of Maryland, Virginia, and then a very small section of the southern coastline of Delaware. Nothing up in New Jersey, but that doesn't mean you can't get tropical storm force conditions. But this is the latest cone from 5 a.m. By the time I drop this video, we'll have another cone from 8 a.m. Does this upgrade to a tropical storm? Potentially. It isn't going to change a whole lot about what I'm going to discuss in this video. Another great way to look at this is Zoom Earth. Forecast to become a tropical storm by 2 p.m. this afternoon today. So you notice how right now it says potential tropical cyclone. Then by 2 p.m. it's saying tropical storm. So this is when it becomes a named storm, which will be Ophelia. Not forecast to strengthen much, but guys, I'll say it now, and I'll say it in the future for other storms. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if this thing tries to become a hurricane right before landfall. We would need it to be a 75-mile-per-hour storm, and then that would make it go from a tropical storm to a Category 1 low-end hurricane. So let's see what happens. We've seen crazier things happen, so I wouldn't be surprised, but this is forecast to maintain tropical storm status through eastern North Carolina and southeast Virginia, and then weaken into probably back into a post-tropical cyclone, something like that, depression as it gets into the Delmarva region. So latest warnings from this, tropical storm warnings up in the red. So if you kind of know where your county is on a map, which I kind of hope you do, but I understand not everybody knows exactly where they are on a map. I feel like that is very important, but we won't get into that. But tropical storm warnings up for pretty much all of eastern North Carolina. So in the red here, this does include areas of like Virginia Beach, the Norfolk area, up the Chesapeake Bay, into southern sections of Maryland, like Salisbury. You guys certainly have tropical storm warnings, I believe. I think you guys do. Let me see. Yes, you guys do. So it's coming. I mean, a tropical storm is coming. This isn't going to be, I don't think, a catastrophic storm or anything. It's not like it's a Category 1, Category 2 hurricane. But this is definitely going to bring tropical storm force conditions. Hence why you got tropical storm warnings up. Let's talk about how the radar could develop today. So this is starting off around 9 a.m. Eastern time. So here in the next hour and a half or so, we get this going in motion. Rain will fully take over eastern North Carolina. We even start to ooze into areas of eastern South Carolina, like Myrtle Beach, where the outer rain bands begin to reach Myrtle Beach, the Grand Strand. And eventually these can make it all the way to like Florence. But either way, I don't think this area of South Carolina is going to get a lot of rain. Even into the sand hills of North Carolina, like Fayetteville, I don't think you'll get a whole lot of rain from this. If you see me scrunching up my nose because I feel like I'm about to sneeze. But seems like it went away. But here comes the actual center of circulation, center of low pressure here, as we're getting into about 6, 7, 8 p.m. this Friday evening today. And you see the pockets of red, orange, that is stronger storm systems. This is when our tornado threat will increase for the coastal plains of North Carolina, even the outer banks. We're going to have the potential for some water spouts out here. Just hunker down, because it's not only are you going to get tropical storm force conditions with these outer bands that begin to wrap in from the north of this low pressure, you're going to have a risk for some tornadic activity, especially the further east you get, like Marsh Island, route, what is that, Highway 64 that goes all the way out to Nags Head. Definitely be careful in these regions. You're going to have a legit tornado risk. Not talking about a tornado outbreak, just your typical tornado risk with these dirty sides of these tropical systems. And this will continue, I think. I mean, even getting into around midnight, you see these pockets of red. This indicates thunderstorms associated with what will at this point be Ophelia, and these will have the chance to spin. Typically with tropical systems with a tornado threat, they're very short-lived tornadoes, but you're certainly going to have a risk of tornadoes. And in fact, you look at this risk here, there's a 5% risk of tornadoes within 25 miles. There's a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location into this region right here. Okay, and this really starts later this afternoon to this evening and lasts into the overnight hours. So, you go back to this and the rain shield begins to take over most of eastern and central sections of Virginia, might make it all the way to Charlotte, maybe Columbia. But you got to watch out for all these storms right into here, just north of the low pressure. I'm telling you guys, this is like in the wee hours of the morning too, 4 a.m. Definitely not a favorable time period. No time period is favorable for tornadoes, right? But in the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping, you definitely want to have your phone's alerts on, because all of a sudden you might get that, loud beeping noise that you get from tornado warnings when your county's under a tornado warning. But, even up to Norfolk, Virginia Beach, you guys need to be careful with some of these bands that move in. And this continues to make landfall, will approach landfall around 7 a.m., will likely make landfall probably around Morehead City, maybe Emerald Isles, maybe a little bit further up the Outer Banks region, and then moves up, starts affecting areas like Newborn and the Havelock region, places like that. So makes landfall here, and you start to get a lot of heavy rain. It begins to move into the Delmarva region. But, speaking of the tornado risk, this is the updraft Felicity swath. It's not super impressive, but typically with tropical tornado threats, you get like low topped tornadoes, meaning it honestly, it looks like a very sloppy tornado, but it's a tornado. They're normally very weak, and they typically last seconds to maybe a couple minutes. They're normally not super strong, but they normally catch people off guard because they're normally very sloppy and you can't really see them. So if you're wondering, what about the impacts up here in the mid-Atlantic and southern New England, I'm going to get to you guys. I'm not leaving you guys hanging. I'll have timestamps up. But speaking of winds, this is coming up to around 10 p.m. tonight. Winds begin to increase. It'll be a windy day even as far west as Columbia, Charlotte, up to Hickory, like the Winston-Salem area, but nothing like tropical storm force conditions. But based off the Euro, it's around 10 p.m. You get winds gusting to 45, 50 miles per hour in the Wilmington region. Even Myrtle Beach, if you're vacationing in Myrtle Beach, winds pushing 40, 45 miles per hour, wind gusts, not sustained, just some wind gust. And then as this really begins its approach to landfall, probably somewhere around the Morehead City region, give or take 30, 40 miles, but it's really locking into this region. But this is the Euro around 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Look at these strong onshore flow winds into the southern and central sections of the Outer Banks, like Cape Lookout. You guys are getting blasted with 50 to 60, maybe at times 70 mile per hour wind gusts. And this is definitely going to be a doozy of a tropical storm. You guys have seen much worse, obviously, but I really think this will be a somewhat strengthening tropical system as it approaches landfall. So this could pack a punch. You're definitely, like I said, if you're out in Cape Hatteras, if you're vacationing in the Outer Banks, you probably want to leave. You still got time to do so, but it's going to get dicey out there. What's like Rodanth, I believe is a place, Frisco. You guys are certainly going to get impacted from this on the right quadrant of the storm, which I think as it's making its landfall will be the worst. That doesn't mean you're not going to get gusty winds into eastern North Carolina, but Raleigh, 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gust. What is it? Greenville, same kind of deal. You guys are probably going to be really close to the whatever's left over of that core of Ophelia and New Bern. Basically, this is going to ride up what looks like maybe Highway 17, ride up Highway 70 into New Bern, then Highway 17, and just kind of ride up in general the I-95 corridor. And by the time you're getting into around lunchtime, still strong winds, around the, that Greenville, Rocky Mount region, very strong winds slashing through extreme eastern areas of North Carolina, Elizabeth City, and starting to approach. It's really starting to pick up in like the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, and this really starts to affect heavily the areas like the Chesapeake Bay, eastern Virginia, where winds are gusting to around 40 to 50 miles per hour. Like I said, nothing too crazy, but this is going to shove a lot of water into the Chesapeake and Delaware Bay. In fact, I think the Delaware Bay is expected to get a record water rise in that area, which I think is like 8.7 feet is the record flood stage. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're in that area, but definitely be careful if you're tucked in right against Delaware. And we're about to talk more on Delaware here in a second, but I have a big issue with getting way too far ahead in my videos sometimes. But rainfall in eastern North Carolina, if you're near the Morehead City area, 5 to 6 inches of rain. Cape Hatteras, a lot of rain. But you got to worry more about the ocean flooding than probably the actual freshwater flooding in this region. But a lot of rain in eastern North Carolina, 3 to 4 inches of rain. It drops off significantly, though, the more west you work. Columbia might not get a drop of rain. They might get a few drops. Charlotte, same thing. But you get into southeast Virginia, 2 to 3, 4 inches of rain is possible. They're going for around 2 to 3 inches of rain in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. Richmond, around 1 to 2 inches of rain. We've already talked about the tornado threat, but we move a little bit further up because you folks in the Delmarva and Mid-Atlantic are going to be impacted from this also. But, we start about midnight tonight. The rain shield begins to take over Washington, D.C. It looks like something you see in the winter when a classic winter storm is moving in from the south and intercepting that cold air. And then all of a sudden you get that front-end thumping of snow that we haven't seen in the Mid-Atlantic in some time. But this kind of looks like that in a way. I can't wait to experience something like that here in South Carolina again. But anyways, I don't want to get into the winter. 5 a.m., heavy rain beginning to take over pretty much all of the Mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva, even some heavier tropical storm force kind of conditions beginning to move into the coastal regions of coastal regions of Maryland. I'm talking 100 miles per hour. And then affecting southern and central and pretty much all of Delaware. This is pushing water into the Delaware Bay, starting to get light to moderate rain affect areas of southern New Jersey as we're getting into the wee hours of the morning. And then we're getting to around 9, 10 a.m. tomorrow. You're probably going to start to get breaks in the rain, but you're going to be dealing with more squally weather probably into eastern Virginia. Basically, if you're in any of the coastal regions of Maryland, near the Bay, Delaware, even getting into southern New Jersey, you guys might get some squally-like weather. But you got to watch out for these little feeder bands as we're getting into tomorrow afternoon. These could still produce, a quick tornado. But there's the actual low-level circulation down here, a big swath of rain getting pushed all the way into southern New England. So by early tomorrow afternoon, rain has pretty much taken over New York City, Long Island, most of the state of Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeast Mass. But if you notice, there's a big tight rainfall gradient right into here. So how far much north does this make it? It's a big question here. Does it make it all the way to Boston? It looks like it does. But eventually this clears out, and this only goes 48 hours out. But you'll probably have another push of rain probably sometime Sunday into southern New England, New York City, Long Island region, this entire region up here. Winds, you will begin to feel it. The winds pick up probably in the Delmarva, mid-Atlantic, certainly central and southern New England throughout the afternoon. Then this evening, they will really begin to pick up with some of these bands working its way in. But as we're getting into Saturday, this is when, we could get some really breezy conditions associated with this front-end thumping of rain. We're starting to see, this is around, when is this? This is around, I think this is around lunchtime. Around lunchtime tomorrow, we're starting to get some tropical storm force wind gusts starting to get into the Delaware Bay. Dover's starting to get some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. Same thing with Salisbury. Chesapeake Bay getting definitely some gale force winds working its way into the bay. Very strong winds getting pushed against the Jersey shore, where you're getting 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. Could be quite breezy in Long Island. 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts are possible if you're tucked in right against these coastal regions of southern New England. Very, very breezy conditions. And then this really begins to kind of weaken. And by the time we're into Sunday morning, this kind of fades away and this system begins to weaken. Rainfall, like I said, tight gradients. It's going to set up somewhere in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina. And, I think central and eastern Virginia is good for 2 to 5 inches of rain. The Delmarva region, probably 3 to 5 inches of rain. Most of New Jersey, southern New England, a good soaking rain to start your weekend. I think by the time we get into Sunday for a lot of these areas, it'll begin to clear out. But I still think you're dealing with the rain up in New York City to Boston as we're getting into our Sunday. But a lot of rain, guys, for sure. Storm surge. This could increase, but as of now, this is the same as last night's video. Could be an issue in the Delaware Bay. You don't see a lot of tropical systems get up here much. It happens, but obviously you see it a lot more the further south you get. But definitely, at most 3 to 5 feet of storm surge in some of these rivers and bays and sounds here. Basically, but sandwiched in between the actual marshlands of eastern North Carolina and the Outer Banks. Could get 1 to 3 feet of storm surge from basically just south of Myrtle Beach all the way to Surf City. Just does include Wilmington too. So I will briefly talk about this. There's an 80% chance for this system out in the Atlantic to develop. I really think this will develop. It's just the fact, is it really going to affect anybody? I know we got some people tuning in from Puerto Rico, maybe the Leeward Islands. And first off, I want to say thank y'all for tuning in. But the good news is if you look at the latest Euro, it does develop this. Sunday, getting into Monday, getting into Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, getting into Thursday, and this is beginning to develop, but it's turning north, not affecting a soul in the Caribbean. It looks like it's turning out to sea. It's beginning to bog down. Is there some kind of high pressure building over this? But 10 days out, what would be what would it be? Philippe would be Philippe out here in the Western Atlantic is not bothering a soul. Okay, so that's good news. And we look at the GFS, same deal, guys. It's We'll have to back it up here. GFS is definitely quicker with the evolution of this. I mean, we get all the way to Tuesday morning. This thing's already a hurricane, and it's already beginning to head north Wednesday morning. Whatever this is heading north and not bothering anybody. So that's the good news. That's the good news. You know, the bad news is just the fish out in the ocean, you know, having to deal with another hurricane. But this, as of now, is not looking like it's going to affect anybody. Could things change? Absolutely. So what's happening out here in our neck of the woods? We're going to have to speed this up because I got to get my kids to school. We obviously got our tropical system right here that we just discussed. We got big areas of rain right into here where the white colors are showing up. The drier areas is more dry air. We got a westerly, southwesterly flow moving out with this subtropical jet coming out here. This is what is promoting some storms across the south central U.S. And then we got this gnarly little spin right here. This pretty much, you know, I would say fully cut off from the mainstream up here to the north. This is just kind of lost out here. It's kind of spinning, but we'll continue to move east. And this will promote the conditions for a lot of precipitation. There's already a lot of precipitation falling out there right now, but even more throughout the day. Snow for Yellowstone National Park in these higher elevations. And then you're going to have a legit tornado threat in areas of the northern plains, which does include Wyoming. Okay, so a lot going on for sure. And it shows it well in the water vapor loop. It really does. So we get this back off your screen. We'll keep moving. And we look at the actual current radar right now. And there's a lot falling out there. You got a huge cluster of storms right here in the middle of the country. Another cluster right here that's actually got a severe thunderstorm warning on it in eastern Oklahoma. This will continue to move into western Arkansas, already raining in portions of western Arkansas. We got rain in central and north central areas of Illinois. We got the developing tropical system off the coast of the southeast. And with this upper level spin, with energy associated with it, a lot of rain falling across Montana, waking up to a very soggy Friday morning for a lot of people. But, you know, snow falling in the higher elevations of Yellowstone National Park. And we got to watch on the, eastern flank of this upper level low and how it's going to get some storms firing in the northern plains today. But a lot of things going on. Severe weather threat. We've already talked about this over here. But there is a legit, I wouldn't be surprised they drop an enhanced risk for this. But as of now, you got a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe storms in the northern plains. You got a 5% risk of tornadoes within 25 miles in any given location. Right here, basically where South Dakota, northwest Nebraska, and Wyoming connect. And a very small little corridor, but has a 5% chance of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. Wind threat, not a huge deal today. But hail threat is, not only do you have the 15% risk of hail, approaching 1 inch in diameter or larger, you also have a hatch risk, which is a 10% risk of 2 inch in diameter or larger hail. Okay, so be careful with that. Flash flooding is a big deal here. Not only with the coastal flooding with the storm surge, but just water falling from the sky. You got a moderate risk, which means you got at least a 40% risk of flash flood guidance being met in this area with this tropical system moving up. And then you got a lot of moisture falling up here in the northern plains. Montana, the Dakotas, got a slight risk, which means there's at least a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met in this region. Southeast, we pretty much talked about just about everything with this. We're going to get some more tropical downpours down here in Miami. You guys in the southern tip of Florida could certainly see some more storms. Somebody asked me in the comments, can you be more specific when talking about weather for South Florida? Guys, it's not a knock on anybody. If I was super specific on one individual state in every single video, the videos would last for hours. I try to get specific on certain things, but I feel like I'm very specific, more specific than maybe how other people talk about weather, but it's extremely hard to focus in for an extended period of time on one area of a state. So if I miss something, just ask a question in the comments and I got you covered. But definitely still some tropical energy down here in the southern tip of Florida that will definitely get you guys some moisture. And then as we're waking up tomorrow morning, it looks like we got a big plume of tropical moisture beginning to take over. So the far southern tip and that, the Florida Keys of Florida down here, Bahamas seeing a lot of rain too from this as we're waking up tomorrow morning. Northeast, pretty quiet, but you got the shield of this rain moving in this evening. We've already talked about this, and as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we're waking up with rain pretty much up the I-95 corridor, these higher elevations. You're waking up with a soggy start to your Saturday morning for sure with rain falling. But in most of the rest of the Northeast, especially the upper portion of New England, not a drop of rain expected from this. South central U.S., we're dealing with this rain and even some severe weather this morning. We'll see if this can rematerialize later on in southern Arkansas, Louisiana. You guys could see some storms later this afternoon around the Shreveport, Monroe area. These might dip down to the Lake Charles area and make it all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Outside of that, there's not really a lot to speak on in the south central U.S. after a pretty active last couple of days. But the north central U.S., there's a lot of little features to talk about. It's raining pretty heavy in certain areas of Illinois. We'll get some more showers that could get going in Iowa, northern Missouri. More showers that could be plentiful in nature out here in pretty much Minnesota. I mean, western Wisconsin could get some isolated showers. North central Minnesota, some rain showers. North Dakota, rain showers, maybe some storms, and definitely some big storms flying through sections of the western Dakotas for sure. And to go on and focus in on that area, this is an area of the state, or area of the country that's going to be wild with Wyoming today. We'll start off kind of mid-morning. Here we go. It's snowing like crazy in these higher elevations of Yellowstone National Park. But then we got some nasty storms developing here in kind of the eastern and northeastern portion of the state. And then we have to watch this little feature right here later on tonight that could produce some tornadoes in extreme eastern sections of Wyoming, southwest South Dakota, and northwest Nebraska. We'll have to watch all these clusters. I think models are going to struggle with this, but you got your classic looking spin out here. Storms are possible up here into Montana, but you're lacking thermodynamics. But definitely a wild weather. You freeze it here around 4 or 5 p.m. in Wyoming, snowing in the northwest corner of the state, storming like crazy in the northeast portion of the state. So these storms right into here, this is getting into 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. These storms will be packing a punch later this evening into the overnight hours. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning with even more storms in South Dakota. You look at the updraft velocity swath, does indicate some rotation with some of these storms. So let's be mindful of this. And then the rainfall, a big plume of rain here in central Montana, 1 to 2 inches of rain. Same thing with South Dakota, a lot of rain expected into this region. This is the rest of the western U.S. There's that spin ongoing with that upper level low. Will bring even more cold air as it really takes over the upper levels of the atmosphere. So even lower elevations will start to get some snow in southern Montana, northwest Wyoming, and even get some snow falling in this area of the higher elevations in northern Wyoming. So definitely getting some early season snow isn't totally uncommon, but here we are. So big gnarly system, and another system, atmospheric river type setup, begins to enter the northwestern portion of the country later tomorrow. But look at the snow showing up in northwest Wyoming. Several inches of snow could fall between now and the next 24 hours. Some area could get 8 to 12 inches of snow. So definitely be mindful of this. Temperatures today, I'm running out of steam, guys. My mouth is getting very dry. Temperatures the northeast, 60s and 70s. Definitely you're influenced by cloud cover and rain in the southeast, but the further you get out the influence of this, you start to get into the south central U.S., more summer type temperatures, unfortunately, unless you're a big summer fan still. But even warm in the Great Lakes region. It's upper 70s, low 80s. That's kind of warm for this time of the year, but I'm sure you guys don't have a lot of warm days left, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And then very cool in the northwest, the Rockies and northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest. Certainly below average out here. That's all I got. Y'all have a great Friday, and God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.